the government's saying they have to close. So we're looking at things like some leisure centres, but again, that depends on which area you're in as to whether your leisure centres have to close or not. Now, what's happened here is that if the business is completely closed, there is obviously no work. So what the government is going to do is it's going to pay 2/3, i.e. 66.67% of the wages. Now, we're talking about normal wages, so we're going almost back to furlough days where we're working out what the normal working week is, the normal wages, but we're looking at current wage levels, the current hourly rate, not the rates for last year that we used for the initial furlough. But we did talk about this before. And the employee is not going to be paid for 1/3 of those hours, 33.3%. So that is as was announced originally, and that hasn't changed. Now, the Open Job Support Scheme is aimed at businesses in Tier 1 and Tier 2 who remain open but may, for whatever reason, not be able to work full time. So people are on, we're looking at things like the Flexi Furlough Scheme, an extension of flexible furlough. Now, this is the one that has changed, because this is where we are as of yesterday. So the minimum worked hours is 1/5 of the week. Now, last week it was 1/3 of the week. That's now been reduced to 20%, which is the equivalent of 1 day. So to a certain extent, that's going to make your furlough calculations easier. If you can bring people in for 1 day a week, you can spread this across your employees. You can bring some in for 1 day, some in for 2 days, some full time. This is on an individual basis, but they have to work the minimum equivalent of 1 day a week. So therefore, if you look at the non-worked hours, that now represents 4/5 of the week. So what I've tried to do is I've tried to actually make these boxes so that they're representative of percentage time to try to make it easier. Now, what happened previously is those non-worked hours were split 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. The employer paid 1/3, the government pays 1/3, and the employee does not get paid 1/3 of their non-working week. Now, the announcement yesterday was that the employer will now only have to pay 5% of the non-worked hours at the standard rate. The government, who was going to pay 1/3, is now paying 61.67%. Now, if you wonder where that figure's come from, it's come from the fact that the employee still has to contribute 1/3. So if you take the 66.67%, take off the 5% that the employer has to pay, that leaves you with the government contribution of 61.67%. So if you look at those two tables together, for the non-worked hours only, whether you are in a closed or an open situation, of the non-worked hours, the employee will always lose 1/3. So if they're in a closed business, they'll lose 1/3 and the government pays 2/3. And that's for the whole of the week because they're not working at all. But if they're in the Open Job Support Scheme, of the non-worked hours, the employee still pays 1/3, the government pays the 61.67% and the employer pays 5%. Now I'm going to go through a worked example for you. So there's the 1 day a week. Again, that's exactly the table I showed you before. Let's have a look at what happens to the size of these boxes if we put someone in working for, say, 2 days a week. Now, if you bring your employee in for 2 days a week, you're obviously going to take up 2/5 of the working week. The remaining 3/5 will again be split down so that the employer pays 5%, the government pays the 61.67%, and the employee is still not paid for 1/3 of the non-worked hours. Okay, so that's a sort of pictorial representation of how the whole thing is going to work. Obviously, if you work for 3 days, the whole thing shunts to the right, the left-hand box gets bigger and the right-hand boxes get progressively smaller. So let's have a look at a worked example. I think this is an example I've used before. We're going to assume a full working week of 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, £10 an hour, because it makes the calculation so much easier. So their normal wage for the week will be £350. Now, let's assume that they are going to work for 2 days per week out of their 5. So this is how the calculations work out. They will work for 2 days a week. So they'll get 2 days times 7 hours times £10 is £140 for their worked hours. So the balance of the wage that they're not going to get paid because they're not working is actually £210. Obvious, 350 minus 140 is £210. Now, how is that £210 going to be split? Well, the employer will pay 5% of it. So 5% of 210 is £10.50. The government is going to pay the 61.67%, which works out at £129.50p. And the remaining third, which is £70, is the bit the employee is not going to get paid. Okay, so if you total that up, the total wage received will be the 140, which is the hours that they've worked, the £10.50, which is the employer contribution to the non-worked hours, and the £129.50 from the government, which is £280. So basically what's going to happen is that when you do your payroll, you will work all this out and you will put £280 through your payroll, tax and national insurance and pensions calculated on that basis, and you must pay the £280. What you then do after you've done your RTI submissions, and we'll pick up on this later, is you will claim back £129.50 of that £280, and you'll claim that back through the Job Support Scheme portal, which will open. But you can't do this in advance. It has to be done after you've paid them. So there is going to be possibly a cash flow situation here, because the employer is having to pay for the work not done up front and then claim it back at a later stage. So that's how a basic calculation works on 2 days per week. And if you take the number of days that they work, this is what it works out to. So what I've done here is I've looked at the same £350 and I've split it in rows for the number of days worked. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. Depending on what they worked, column 2 is the earned income. So if you work it down, there's our 2 days at £140. If they're working the full week, of course, they're going to get the full £350. The third column, sorry, is the balance that's left. So it's the unearned income. So it starts, if you're only working 1 day a week, they won't be earning £280, right the way down to 5 days where there is no unearned income. If you then take that balance and you work out the 2 contributions, so the employer's is 5%, HMR contribution, and you add together the total income, the total actual income is what your employee will be paid based on £350 per week normal and based on being working for 1 through to 5 days. Now, the final column is an interesting one because it is the percentage of their normal wage. So if you look at the first one, £256.68 happens to work out at 73% of £350. 2 days a week, and I've done this with quite a few calculations, so I'm pretty certain this works. If they work 2 days per week, they will earn 80% of their normal weekly wage, which is what the furlough has been. So on 2 days a week, they're earning what they were earning when they were fully furloughed, 80% of their wage. And the more they work, the higher percentage of their basic wage they get. Till if they're working full-time or 5 days a week, they're actually getting 100% of their working week. Now, I haven't read it myself. It was purely from, I picked up on one of the social media posts this morning. I think it was from one of the newspapers. But apparently the Prime Minister announced yesterday that everybody should therefore be able to bring home a minimum of 80% of their working week. Now, obviously, if they're working on day one, that's not going to match because they're only on 73%. But the idea is that this is topped up with universal credits. Now, the feedback that was going around on social media this morning is that to make this viable, it is only those individuals who are on the lowest income and who have dependent families such that they're claiming almost the maximum universal credit they can to bring their total income up to at least 80%. So if anybody saw that from the Prime Minister, I didn't hear the announcement. I purely picked this up on social media this morning. That's how the percentages work. So it seems to make sense that the more you work, the more you get paid. So hopefully that's makes sense. Now, if anybody wants to go and check my figures, you're perfectly entitled to. Everybody who knows me knows that my arithmetic, for a bookkeeper, my arithmetic is not always the best in the world, but I'm pretty certain those figures are correct because I have been through them at least 4 times this morning. And I've also done them with, I did them on a £600 a week salary, and the percentages came out exactly the same. So that's how the figures will work as to what's going to have to be paid. So don't forget, the total actual income has got to be paid at the end of the week or the end of the month, but it's the HMRC contribution that you will then claim back under the job support scheme. Right, okay, now we'll look at the capped amounts. Now, again, I've been looking at the figures this morning and this worked out
quite... Interrupt you a second, Jackie. Heather's just asked, can they download the slides? Presumably you're going to put these up immediately we finish?
Yeah, I need to find out. I'm hoping that we will be able to get them up so you can have a look at these because there is an awful lot of information in here.
It saves everybody scribbling while they're watching. So
yeah, no, that's the idea. We'll put them up, but also you'll be able to watch this again. If you want to go through it again, you can watch it again on YouTube or Facebook or whatever. But yeah, we will get the slides out to you.
Excellent.
Right, so now the government has obviously capped these as they capped the furlough, original furlough, at £2,500 per month. Now, HMRC, under the closed scheme, so this is where you're not working, will pay a maximum of 2083.33 per month. Now, how did they get to this figure? Well, actually, it's quite interesting. The UK median salary is £3,125 per month. Now, for those who can't remember their statistics from school, the median is the middle value. Remember when we did stats at school, you got mean, median and mode. The mean is the average. The mode is the number that appears most often in the range, and the median is the middle salary. So if you take everybody who's working and list their gross salaries in a rising scale, it's the one in the middle, and it works out at £3,125 per month. Now, the government is paying 2/3 of this. So 2/3 of the median salary works out at 2083.33. So that's how the government's come up with their figure. Now, this one cropped up last week, this question, and we've got an answer now. Employers will not be required to contribute, but they can top up the government's contribution if they choose to. Now, that's actually the first time I've seen that in writing from this. This came out yesterday in the government guidance, and this morning I saw it. Anyone who is signed up for agent emails from HMRC will get this information coming out to them in an email. So that's the closed scheme. So now let's have a look at the caps on the open scheme. For the open scheme, the HMRC contribution is capped at 1542.75 per month. Now, that's gone up from 697.92, which was what the capped figure was when the government was going to contribute 1/3. So it's gone up to 61.67%. That's the capped figure. And the employer contribution is capped at £125 per month. But again, if the employer wants to, they can top this up. Now, we weren't sure about that this last week. Now, again, let's look at where the figures came from. If you gross those figures up, both of those, 1542.75, grossed up from 61.67% to 100%, and the £125 grossed up from 5% to 100%, means those figures come up to £2,500 per month, which, if you remember, was the original furlough figure. Now, the furlough figure was the maximum. It was 80% of their normal salary capped. And again, if you take that £2,500, gross it up from 80% to 100%, lo and behold, we end up back on the median salary of 3,125 per month. So that's how the government's worked out its capped figures. Anyone's keeping up with the arithmetic with me on this? Well done. It took me 4 hours to get here this morning. Now, as the caps, as the percentage of working hours increases, the caps will be reduced. Now, the government's going to issue some more information on this. There is going to be a calculator, as there always has been for this, and we will get some information out to you. But if you think back to the table where we had the working days from 1 through to 5, the employee's contribution will reduce and therefore the cap will reduce. Now, I would imagine that it will be reduced on a sliding scale, exactly depending on the number of days that are worked. So I'm sure you'll be able to work that out, but that should be given out. And in both schemes, the employer will need to cover all employer national insurance and pension contributions for both schemes. Now, you cannot claim those back. So we're still in the situation we've been in since 1st of July, where employers had to start paying national insurance and pension contributions. Now, the one thing I will say at this stage is that I don't yet know, and I haven't seen anything about anybody who maybe already has been put on a redundancy notice since the original figures were brought out. Because remember, the job support scheme is only available to those who are not on a redundancy notice, and you cannot make anybody redundant whilst you're claiming job support scheme. So I'm sure there's going to be loads of questions on redundancies, but I don't have any answers to that at the moment. So that's how the calculations have been worked out for the total amount of capped. Now, a quick one on timing. Employers will be able to make their first claims in arrears in December for pay periods ending and paid in November. From the 8th, sorry, I'm covered up there, from the 8th of December. So the portal will be open, but remember that RTI submissions must have been made for the relevant period. So there is no claiming in advance like we did with furlough. You have to pay them in November. You have to pay the government contribution in November. You have to submit the RTI by the end of November. Whether you're doing this weekly or monthly, then you can claim back probably monthly from the 8th of December. So for larger companies that have got a lot of people off, particularly in the closed scheme where they've got no money coming in, this could very well cause some cash flow situations. So anyone in that situation, and I'm sure there are going to be some of you with clients in this situation, are going to have to be look very carefully at what your clients are going to be able to do. And HMRC are going to issue further details about how you make that claim by the end of this month. Now, I am sure, like we did with furlough and flexible furlough, there will be another portal that you can go in. You'll have to probably put the information in on the employees that you're claiming for, and take it from the amount and put the amounts in. And there will be some form of checking. Now, interestingly enough, because this is being done after the RTI, HMRC should be able to actually know how much you're going to be claiming, because we all know that there's been quite a lot of fraud from a number of companies who have used this to fraudulently claiming information, claim grants back from HMRC. And I think this will probably go some way, but it's going to have some cash flow issues. Now, this is an interesting one that I wasn't aware of before. Employers will be able to check if their employer has made a job support scheme claim on their behalf through their online personal tax account. Now, I think this is another checking procedure that HMRC have put into place, because previously we've talked about employees who perhaps were being made to work but weren't aware that their employers might have been fraudulently claiming CJRS grants and still making them work. And there was no way of knowing what was being claimed on their behalf. So this is an interesting one that I've not seen before. So can check to see if your employer's made a claim on your behalf in your personal tax account. Now, I don't want to go through personal tax accounts today, but everyone has one. They log in through the government gateway and they can see all sorts of information on how much they're earning, what their tax and national insurance contributions are, pension forecasts, all that sort of thing can be done from there. So that's what's happening on the timing. So that's the job support scheme. So let's now have a look at what's happening with the business grants. I told you there was a lot today. Now, this was announced last week and hasn't changed. Tier 3 businesses can apply for grants of up to £3,000 per month, whether they are closed or open. So it doesn't matter what, if you're in Tier 3, even if you're still working and you're open, you can apply for grants of up to £3,000 per month. In the high alert areas, Tier 2, grants are available on a sliding scale depending on the rateable value of the business. Now, we were tied up with rateable values under the initial grants under CJRS. I haven't been able to find out the answers to the questions that we've already had, such as what happens if your rates are included in the rent that you pay. There are some discretionary rewards, but at the moment, if the rateable value is greater than £51,000, the grant is available of up to £2,100 per month. Now that's 70% of the Tier 3 allowance. So those are for the larger properties with rateable value above 51,000. If your rateable value is between £15,000 and £51,000, the grant is up to £1,400 per month. And if you're less than 15,000, your grant will be a maximum of £934 per month. Now, that in itself sounds fine, but there is a slight crunch to that because the grants are available from your local authority. Now, the local authority is going to be given money, but it is the local authority who will determine the actual amounts payable. So I think you could be in a situation where, depending on which local authority your clients are in, you're getting more from one local authority than you might be from another local authority, and the size of the businesses might be exactly the same. So we watch this space to see what's going to happen. Now, the local authorities will also be given an additional 5% top up. The only thing I've got from the details, it's for businesses who might be affected, but which do not neatly fit into the above categories. So that may be for the businesses who are perhaps paying their rates as part of their rent, or who might be part of a communal workspace area. So again, I think we're going to have to wait for some more information on those. Getting there, nearly there, folks. Right, self-employed grants. These have gone up since last week. Last week, the Chancellor announced that they would be paying 20% of net profits. That's now gone up to £40,000 and is capped at £3,750 per claim, which has gone up from 1,875. But this is not monthly. This is for a 3-month period. And again, this is linked in to this median salary, because it works out, if you take 3 months at 3,125, which is the median salary, multiply it by 40%, that comes out to be a total of 3,750. So that's how the SAYS grant has been worked out. Now that's going to be capped. So again, we're going back. You must be eligible for this, and the rules at the moment are exactly the same as they were for the first and the second grants, that you have to have submitted your self-assessment tax returns, and you make a claim for the percentage of your profits. Now, as I understand it at the moment, those who weren't eligible for the first and second grants are probably not going to be eligible for this grant either, because they will be new businesses, and there are still quite a few businesses and individuals who are going to fall through the cracks. The Chancellor said right from the start, he's not going to be able to help everybody. So I think if you were in that situation, and exactly the same thing is going to happen for the sole business owner who is working and has perhaps been taking dividends rather than salaries, the same thing is going to happen. They're not entitled to self-employment grants, and they may not be entitled to the job support scheme because they're directors, and we still have had nothing about the sole director shareholder and what's going to happen about the hours they can work. And we've been through this before. I still have no information on that. Now, the first grant is available to cover the 3 months from November to January. This whole thing starts on the 1st of November. The estimated cost to the Treasury of this is £3.1 billion for this third wave of SAYS grants. And there will be a second grant available to cover the months of February to April, but the details are yet to be announced. Now, we don't know what the percentage is going to be. The Chancellor will announce that nearer the time. Okay. Now, the other comment I picked up from the details that came out this morning, to ensure that support will be targeted to those who most need it, SAYS grant extension will be available to self-employed individuals who temporarily cannot trade, as well as those continuing to trade and facing reduced demand. Now, that is exactly the same as grants 1 and 2, those who are shut down or those who are still working. So that affects possibly people like our members. Now, on grants, certainly on SAYS grant 2, you had to look at that 3-month period to see if your income has been affected or your expenses have increased. And the same thing's going to happen here. You're going to have to look at your income from November to January and see if it is likely to be reduced. And don't forget, I didn't mention it last week, I forgot to mention it last week, the second SAYS grant is no longer available. That portal closed on the 19th, which was, I think, Monday, and I did forget to mention it on Friday. So SAYS 2 is now closed, can't do any more. So that's what's happening on the self-employment grants, and further details are coming out mid-November, which is, I think, when the portal is going to open, sometime in the middle of November, we think is the latest update we've got on that one. So that's self-employed grants. Now let's have a quick look at the job retention bonus. This hasn't changed. Employers will be able to claim a one-off payment of £1,000 for each eligible furlough they furloughed. Get the teeth right. Each eligible employee that they have furloughed and claimed for through the CJRS. Now, they only had to make one claim. As long as they've made a single claim and they're keeping them on, they will be entitled to the £1,000 bonus. They have to be employed till the 31st of January. They have to have fulfilled all other eligible criteria. And you have to have actually, £1,000 per employee who qualifies. Now, the employers don't have to pay this to the employee. This is a grant to the employer, does not have to go to the employee. And employers will be able to claim the bonus between the 15th of February and the 31st of March. So it's a very narrow 6-week window. But to do this, they have to have submitted PAYE information for the period up to the 5th of February. If you remember, that's the end of the January-February month. Is that month 10? March 9 or 10, can't remember, can't count. By the 5th of February. So they have to have completed that. And then they can start to apply for the grant for those employees who fulfill the eligibility. Now, if you had an employee who was, say, working full time and you didn't claim any furlough, you are not entitled to the job retention bonus. This is purely for those people who were kept on under the job retention scheme. And this is the bonus that they will be given. CJRS is coming to an end on the 31st of October. Employers will need to make final claims on or before the 30th of November. Now, I was talking to a member this morning about making the final claim. The portal closes after the 30th of November. So if you haven't made your last claim for your October CJRS, you will not be able to claim any money back. Okay. Now, this has come out, this is not me, this is HMRC speak. We have talked about over and under claims, and what HMRC is saying now is it's important that employers check each claim is accurate before submitting it. And HMRC are also recommend checking any previous claims and repaying the amount overclaimed. Now, we spoke last week about the deadline of the 20th of October. That was for the earliest of claims. That deadline has now passed. And there are deadlines now as to when you must inform HMRC if you have overclaimed. So 90 days from receiving the money to which they're not entitled, your clients, or 90 days from the date circumstances changed, so they were no longer entitled to keep the CJRS grant. Now, we've talked about this before. Now, I understand that HMRC have been sending out lots of letters to employers who they think may possibly need to check the figures. They're not saying it's fraudulent. They're asking you to check the figures. And I've had some emails. Had emails coming in from members through member services this week from members whose clients have had these letters and saying, do we have to do the whole lot in one go? Well, no, you don't, because the later claims, so for example, if you've been claiming back, say, for September, and you got the money in October, you have 90 days from the date that money was received to pay back any overpayments. So it's not quite as bad as we thought it was going to be. As I've said before, though, we've spent so much time working out what the claim is going to be. If you do check it and you find there's nothing wrong with it, then just let HMRC know. And unless they think it is a definite fraudulent claim, they will back off and leave you to get on with it. If you think you've got it right, you must have your information there. You must have your calculations. I'm sure you've all got them because we've been going on about this since probably about the third week in March, I think, which seems an awful long time ago now. Now, if the worst happens and you don't notify HMRC of an overpayment, you may have to pay interest and a penalty as well as repaying back the CJRS grant. And I think we worked out some time ago that the maximum you could pay back in fines and penalties was the amount that's equal to the actual grant itself. So you could end up paying double what you claimed to which you weren't entitled. Now, if you are paying any money back, just a reminder that you can let HMRC know as part of your next online claim without needing to call them. So if you are having to refund, and I know there is one member that I've spoken to this morning who has worked out that there is a very small overclaim. And the reason that this overclaim has cropped up is not because her calculations were wrong. They were absolutely correct. But because of this dratted employer's allowance that took a very long time to sort out as to whether you could claim one or the other or both. And do go back and check the employer's allowance, because in having a chat this morning, we found out that there was a very small overclaim over and above the amount of the employer's allowance. Fortunately, in this case, the client was well prepared that this might have to be paid back and is quite happy to do this. Okay. If you've claimed too much but do not plan to submit any further claims, so you can't reduce any further payments, you've got to contact HMRC, and either make a repayment online through their card payment service or by bank transfer. So rather than reduce future claims, you've got to actually pay it back. And that is it. Pause for a deep breath. There's an awful lot there, so we will get that up. Let me stop sharing my screen. So
well, we are starting to get some questions, but why you have a rest for a second?
Yeah.
You can start calling through the questions. They're coming in at the moment.
Will do.
And if I can lighten the load a little bit, I mean, earlier this week,
the
team at ICB had a competition amongst itself, among the team. We've all submitted photographs of ourselves as babies, and the plan was to try and get everybody to try and decide who was who. It went very well, actually. What we've decided to do, we haven't had time to get it for today because we have to ask everybody. We've asked a lot of people if they're happy for us to share their pictures, but we're going to organise a competition for you, the listeners, at some stage, and the watchers and our members. We'll be putting something up, see if you can read a bit of just to give you an idea, I don't know if you can see that. Just interested to know if anybody knows who that might be. I'm not trying to embarrass anybody, but that is one of our team. But anyway, I'll take that away. And but we will be showing you, I think there are 22 of us at the moment, so we'll be putting that on there, yeah, me included. And we'll see what comes out of that and see what you can find. Jackie, do you want to start taking the questions, or do you need a bit more time? Are you okay?
One on the chat line from Dilip. Do business grants only apply to hospitality sector or all businesses? I knew this was going to crop up. they apply to all businesses, but I have a feeling that they are different grants depending on whether they're hospitality or normal businesses. What I will do is I will look that one up, and I will actually add that to the slides, because I should have covered that one, and I obviously didn't.
They're all going to be happening.
Right, questions. Good afternoon. Do you have a template letter we can use for JSS for short time working for clients to use? I don't.
Not yet, no.
Not yet, no. We might be able to work on something. We'll keep that one in abeyance, if that's all right, Gary, and see what we can do on that one.
Okay.
Also, do we know if directors on the payroll, not the sole director, can claim the job retention bonus? Yes, I think the answer to that is probably yes, because if the fact that they're directors, they are still employees of the company. So if they've been kept on and if they've been furloughed, yes. And we also think that if you are a sole director, that you might still be able to claim that as well if you furloughed yourself and you're still paying PAYE and submitting a salary. I see no reason why you shouldn't. But again, these are some of the little nuances that we're going to have to tease out over the next couple of weeks. Sandra says, hi, is it too late to claim back July and August furlough payments? I was at a quarterly client yesterday and nothing from HMRC since the June wages. I haven't been able to get a response from the payroll, so I don't know if the claim has been submitted or not. Yes, you can, I think, still claim for the months you didn't. The idea was that you claim for it monthly, but I think if you haven't made the claim for whatever reason, I see no reason, unless somebody has seen something that I've missed that says it has to be done monthly. But the final claims are there, and hopefully you will be able to claim those back. Catherine, so presumably the employee must contribute a third. There is no option from an employer to top up their wages as they did in the furlough scheme. Yes, they can top the wages up for this one. That has become clear. If the employer wants to top up the wages, that's fine. Obviously, the national insurance pension contributions going up, but that was in the slide. So they have said this time that if the employer wishes to top up, they can do that.
Exactly what Susanna Whelan has come in. Yes, that's her.
Yeah, they've confirmed they can choose to top up the employer's pay. Can we download this slide? Yeah, we'll get that one. Hi, so if you can't offer any hours to an employee, do they get nothing after the 1st of December if the business is open? Yeah, I think this is the problem. If your business is open, but you haven't got any hours to offer your employees, then they have to be working a minimum of 1 day a week to benefit from the job support scheme. So if you've got people on 0 hours contracts and you haven't got any work for them, they're not going to get paid. And they will have to rely on things like universal credit. I think it's tough, but that is one of the problems with 0 hours working. If there is no work, they're not going to get paid. And if they're not working, they're not going to get a top up. What I think will happen, though, is I don't think this has to be 1 day every week. I think it can be done per pay period. So if you've got a limited amount of work, you might be able to bring them in on a rolling basis and get some help for all of them. I think it's up to the employer to decide what they're going to do.
Anonymous has said regarding business grant, is this per business or per property under the non-domestic rates?
I think it's possibly per property because it's for whoever pays the business rates. So if you've got two businesses sharing a property, I don't think they can both claim it. It doesn't seem right to me unless they split it depending on the portion of rates that they pay. So, for example, if the rates are over 51,000 and they split the rateable value is over 51,000, but it's split between more than one business, maybe they can claim on a pro rata basis. Joyce, what will happen with 2 weekly or 4 weekly payroll crossovers where RTI will not be submitted by the 5th of February? The answer to that is I don't know, because you have to have had an RTI done for that period up to the 5th, and they have to have been employed by the 31st of January. I think that's a question that's going to come up later again, because there must be a way around that. But at the moment, Joyce, I can't see what that's going to be. Right, this one, CSSP. Sorry, I'm just reading this one, which is about statutory sick pay. I might have to come back on that one, Joanne. Let me read that one and think about that. There's a question here on statutory sick pay and reclaiming it, so I will need to have a think about that one.
Shelley, you can submit any overclaims via the PAYE portal where you make a claim. This is a lot faster than calling HMRC and going through their claims.
Yeah, I mean, if you can do it online, then please do it online, because it's an automated system. It's only if you're submitting over claims, you have to ring them if you're not intending to claim anything else. Let's say, for example, that you brought everybody back to work full time, so you're not claiming anymore, but you've overclaimed. You can't then repay that back through the next online claim payment. So therefore you would have to ring them, and that's the only way of doing it. I don't think there's any other way of doing it if you're not making a further claim.
Yolanda AC says, hi, Gary and Jackie. Many thanks, Jackie, for this important presentation. As always, I'm the warm-up act for Jackie, but never mind. I'm quite happy with that. I'm quite happy to sit back and listen.
Only very occasionally, Gary. Dee's come in. Have you any news on the company directors and whether they can claim under the flexible furlough scheme? I'm afraid I haven't, Dee. I've been asking questions and everybody's ducking the issue. I will need to give this some thought, and I will keep trying. The problem is we've only got until the end of November to claim it back. The problem is I don't think there's anything that says they can't claim it. It's a question of how much they claim and how do they prove how many hours they've been working. I think that is the issue.
Suzanne Whelan's got a good question. Are the local authority grants only for businesses in hospitality, leisure and accommodation? I have a client who is not directly in these categories, but whose entire customer base is, so has therefore been very badly affected. Would they be entitled to any help?
Yes, they are. I've got a funny feeling that it might be slightly less. I think that picks up on Dilip's question from earlier. And I think the answer is yes. And there was a lower figure announced last week, which seems to have disappeared into the system. So I will try and find the answer to that, and I will put it in the slides before we update the slides. I'll try and add some more answers in work based on the questions that we're doing. There is one more actually from further up, Gary, from Joanne. Job support scheme open. According to the guidance, the employee must work a minimum of 20% of their hours, and it's up to the employer's discretion as to whether they want to top up the wages. But does this mean that the HMRC portion is reduced? If the employer can afford to top up, shouldn't the employee be working more hours? No, because it's a top up, and I think the government will pay the amount of the non-worked hours. The top up, I think, is an ethical issue. If they can afford to top them up, should they be paying them to work more hours? My purely personal view on that is probably yes, they should be getting them to work more hours rather than topping up if they can't. But on the other hand, it may be that they are not open for them to work, but they don't want them to suffer. So they are in a position, fortunately, to pay them more money, even though they may not be able to open because of restrictions.
And if you can put your payroll hat on for a moment, it's one here from Maggie. Do the various elements of the job support pay need to be shown separately on the payslip?
I think the answer to that is yes, it should be, because it's going to make your calculations and your justification a lot easier. When we did furlough, the original furlough, we looked at the furlough claims, and we had it as a separate item, so it was furlough pay. Then when we came into flexible working, we looked at worked hours and flexible hours. And now I think what you're probably going to need to do is to split it down even further. And I would suggest that you have worked hours government contribution, employer's contribution, and then possibly any top up shown separately. Now, if you do it that way, you have the evidence that you need to prove that you've not overclaimed on the government's portion. How that is going to work out through the RTI, because the RTI will only upload gross figures. It won't it won't upload it in a split area. But I think working on the basis that, as all bookkeepers and good bookkeepers and good payroll agents should do, is more is definitely better. The more detail you've got, the more records you've got. If you show it as a single item on the payslip, then you must have breakdown figures kept outside the payroll, which I think is probably another way of doing it. But we're looking at some pretty hefty spreadsheets here to work out what the percentages are. I would always stick it in a spreadsheet, because then you can percentage it and use formula and things. It's going to make the whole lot a lot easier.
And I think the employee should know how much the contributions are from the various sides. I mean, on the very early days, Jack, I think you came across this one as well. One employer was claiming that they were making all the payments, whereas in fact they were claiming the furlough. But it looked better to their employee that it was technically coming from them. Well, it wasn't. So, I think government probably wants you to know what it's doing.
I think so. And I think that's why they put this in the personal tax account. So you can actually see what's being paid to your employer under this job support scheme. So there is no way now that they can't go back and say, well, look, this is what you claimed, because it's in my personal tax account, because it's showing up separately, which I think is a brilliant bit of programming from someone. They've obviously learned a lot from the first element. I am going to
all closed and open schemes information apply to Scotland.
Yes, I think it does. I did see something about the four devolved parliaments about that. So I think this is a nationwide one. Whether that's coming direct to the employers in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland from HMRC, or whether it's coming through the Scottish parliaments, is have to say something that's not known. But I think this is standard nationwide. I think this one. Oh gosh, there's lots of little dates here coming up. Peter, oh, hang on. Sorry, I don't want to miss any. Isla, can an employee work elsewhere with the main employer's permission at the same time as receiving JSS from the main employer? I think so, because we've always been able to work second jobs under coronavirus. I think what you've got to look at, though, is what your average weekly wage would be, because if you've got a temporary second job to make up your money, you're not going to be able or available to work from your main employer, which is going to cut down the hours that you're going to work, and therefore cut down the percentages of what can be paid and reclaimed. So I think the answer to that is probably yes, but you've got to, again, we're back to the calculations of looking at how many hours. For example, if I got a job Thursday and Friday working for somebody else, I was not available to work for the Institute. Therefore, my working week would therefore temporarily be 3 days a week. So if I was under this, what the Institute would claim for me would be a percentage of my total working week for that business. What I don't think you should do, because I think that's an ethical issue, is claim for the whole lot and then the fact you go away and work for someone else. I think that's unethical.
Yeah, I think, again, going back to the early days of this, we had employers who were swapping staff. They were furloughing the staff, then swapping them with one of their mates along the road who was a competitor, and then taking the mate's staff and then playing them. And it was all seen as a bit of a fiddle. I think you shouldn't really be using any of this to earn more than you would normally earn, but there's nothing to stop you trying to get as close as possible. But I don't think that's ethically correct.
Right, now I've got a couple of questions. There's one in the chat line and one here from Erica, and we've got one from Jen on the chat line, which are very similar. If you furlough people in November, can you only furlough those who were furloughed previously? Well, it's not a furlough, because you're not furloughing people in November, because a furlough finishes on the 31st of October. It's now a completely new system. The job support scheme is not based on furloughing as such, although in effect it's the same as flexible furlough. But the rules are that you have to have claimed at least one furlough payment for them, I think, to be eligible to join the job support scheme. So, for example, if you have paid people full time because they haven't been furloughed, and all of a sudden you think, oh, well, actually, we're going to put her on this person on part time, we're going to claim job support scheme, I don't think it's going to be available. So therefore, Jen's comment on the chat line, is JSS also available for new employees? The answer to that is, I think not, because they would not have been furloughed previously. Now, when we were into furlough, we were looking at people who had moved jobs and whether or not they could go back to their previous employer and everything else. Now, whether that's going to apply or not, I don't know. This is literally still early days. We got this out yesterday. The detail came out this morning. And I am sure over the next week or so, we're going to be able to answer a lot more of the questions. So please forgive me if I'm missing out on anything. Hannah has asked, do you think the calculations for variable hours workers will be similar to furlough and be based on the same week and month as last year? I think if they're on variable contracts, then yes, that could be the case, because otherwise you've got nothing. It's the same as flexible furlough. You've got nothing on which to base what their normal working week would be. And I think we're going to take the average working week or income from the previous year and base it on that. Now that brings into a situation like overtime and commissions. And again, we're into contractual work here. What's contractual, what's not? If it's not contractual, it shouldn't be included. If it is, we will find out. But what I will do after today is I will go through Iris, who's staunchly sitting in the back here, making sure both Gary and I are towing the line properly. Will send me a list of the questions and things so I can go through these and get back to you.
We've got a couple of questions here. One from Judith Siddle saying, do you know if Wales being on total lockdown are any different? And then one from Sue Fraser about Scotland. I mean, the lockdown, you base the payments on what tier of lockdown, but yeah, each country decides what tier of lockdown, but that's the same surely as Manchester, Liverpool, anywhere else. It's that which dictates.
I'm sorry, I'm chuckling about the Scottish comments from Sue Fraser, because it says here, I'm sorry, this is not funny, but I just happen to find this amusing, and I'll explain why. In Scotland, do we have to wait until the Scottish Government announces its 5-tier plan to decide where our clients lie in terms of being open or closed? Or do yesterday's announcements cover the whole of UK regardless? I can see this being very confusing. Well, actually, Sue, so can I. And the reason I smiled is that the Scottish Government have 5 levels of income tax rates, whereas the UK, or the English Government and the Welsh have only 3. So we've got 3 tiers of job support. So yeah, Scotland have gone for 5. I don't know is the answer to that. And we will, I promise you, I will have more information for you for next week. We're still just about going to be in October next Friday. I think it's the 30th. So we're still within CJRS next Friday. So I'll try and get some answers for you for that. Nicola's come back and said Wales doesn't have the tier system. I obviously need to do an awful lot more work on this. So forgive me for those who are based outside of England.
Yeah, we need to get that sorted. And we have invited a number of people to contribute to our meetings, but we haven't got anybody at the moment. So they will be coming forth. Meanwhile, I'm afraid it all falls on you. But you have broad.
Well, I'll certainly come back. I mean, it may be that if these questions we can answer them before, we might come back before Friday. If not, I will try and get a full answer.
Yeah, I think we should try and do that. We'll see who we can get from the Principality and from Scotland to see.
Yeah, I would help. It would help, because I said last week I get confused as to what's UK based, and
yeah.
Yeah, I thought the announcement was the whole of UK-wide basis because it's to do with furlough, but the tier system is going to cause a problem. Catherine has come in saying, so if a client has no work to give staff with a 40-hour contract, how can they claim? They don't want to make staff redundant. Do they need to say they've worked 1 day at least, even though they didn't? That's a difficult one, that one. I don't think I can answer that one, Gary.
No,
Again,
I mean,
I think that's one I'm going to have to come
got to
back on
work,
next
haven't
week.
they? You can't really say somebody's worked if they haven't.
Not really.
No, that's an ethical minefield. And
yeah, because you could also be opening up a whole load of HR problems, and I mean, in problems of things like insurance, because things like public liability insurance and things, if you've got no work and yet you're saying you're employing people, you know, how do you prove where they were at what time? And, you know, I just have a horrible feeling that things like health and safety and all sorts of things could come into play on that one if there's an issue.
I mean, ICB basically says if it didn't happen, you don't claim for it. So, you know, let's make sure if you get asked that by clients, etc., you only do what, you know, you cover what has actually happened, you cover what you can actually claim for. Jackie was saying earlier that you know, there's been a lot of fraud in this. And I saw the figure this one. I'm trying to remember what it was. It was either 10 or 20% of all claims are under suspicion.
I think it's nearly 20% now. I think it's up to 20%.
Yeah, and you really don't want your career to come to a nasty end because you've fallen out with HMRC.
No. And I will say, though, just on that the vast majority of these fraudulent claims have come from a reasonably small number of businesses which were fraudulently set up purely to claim grants and things, more grants than CJRS, because when businesses were applying for the grants, the banks and the other individuals, you know, the people who were actually giving these grants were not doing the normal due diligence on whether they were entitled to the grants. And now the grants have gone out, the companies will shut down and they'll claim the money under the 80% guaranteed by the government, unless it can be proven that they're definitely fraudulently picked this up. But I think, again, small errors we can bear with, but other ones, it's got a problem. Shelley has come back saying, sorry, you can submit an overclaim on the portal if you do not need to claim again. When you go to make a new claim, there is a tab which says, tell us about an overclaim or make a voluntary repayment if you do not need to make any more claims. My apologies. Thanks, Shelley. So you don't necessarily have to ring them. You can. No, you can do it online. You're right. You have to ring them if you've made an underpayment and you want to claim more. That you have to do by the telephone. But an overclaim can be done, and you just notify them and then make the payment.
John says, brilliant. Thank you, Jackie. Heather Nunn says, will the government issue a statutory calculator?
They are going to issue a calculator to work this out, yes. And if it's the same as previous ones, providing you put the correct information in and you can prove what the calculator comes up and says, then they will accept those figures, because sometimes the calculator figures will be slightly different to the figures that you or I may have worked out because of things like 4 weekly payments, fortnightly payments, the number of days in the month. We all knew when we started that there were some differences, but as long as you can justify your figures or you do it through the calculator, then that's fine. Garbage in, garbage out. So you put the decent information in, they will accept it. If you've got wrong information, you're going to get it out wrong.
Ram says, thank you very much for this. We're helping us through this complicated situation. It's getting more complicated by the day, and we shall be here for as long as we can. Sean, get a day-to-day timesheet. Alison Bradley, I have a similar situation. A client who provides inflatables for large events. So he's not technically closed, but has absolutely no work. There doesn't seem to be any help for this type of business unless I've missed something.
I have a feeling that this may have to come under the grant situation. Now, there was apparently there are a number of businesses who, after many years, are having to close down because they just have not got the income to sustain them, and they're not getting the help and support that they need. So yeah, I think this is one I will have to follow up on all of this, and we will come back with a lot more information for you next week, hopefully. Adrian Wright is saying, with holidays built up over the furlough period, do those holidays count towards days worked under the new scheme? Yes, I think they will do, because under the furlough scheme, you had to pay holiday at the full rate, not the reduced rate. So yes, if they're taking holiday, you will have to pay them a full holiday. And therefore, if they're taking a full week's holiday, then you've got to pay them a full week and not claim for it. Oh, Jen. Oh, this is going to be a nightmare one. Jen, if an employee is going on maternity leave from November and the business is closed due to tier 3, is there anything they can claim for the maternity pay? They can still claim maternity pay because the statutory payments are outside this. So if you've got someone going on maternity pay, you will claim the full maternity pay because maternity pay is reclaimable back. So that's possibly quite one of the better outcomes, because if they go on furlough, you pay the maternity pay, you claim the maternity back, plus if you're a small employer, an extra 3% to cover your employer's national insurance, and you don't claim that. So anyone going on maternity leave is probably going to be better off because they're going to get 90% of their normal salary stroke wage for 6 weeks, and then they drop down to basic SMP. Now, the one thing we haven't looked at, and I haven't mentioned today before anybody jumps in, is statutory sick pay, because at the moment, if someone is having to isolate, maybe through track and trace or something like that, then they are currently supposed to be on minimum statutory sick pay. Now, obviously, if the employer wants to top up or they're working from home, that's not an issue. But there are other areas that they can apply for if they're on statutory sick pay. I think from the local government, we were talking last week, is it £500 a month that might be available from local authorities if you are having to shield through, if you happen to be one of the, whatever it is, 60% of people who have been contacted through track and trace.
You've been talking for an hour, which I know is nothing to a woman.
I was going to say, I can't believe the time.
I know. So whilst you just catch your breath, I mean, we've got over 50 questions today, so I think we've been through most of them, but I will just to make a few announcements. Obviously, we've got conference coming up soon. That's on the 17th and 18th, as you know. In fact, it is growing by the day. It's now going to be on the 17th, 18th and 19th. And then possibly bits of it held over to the 20th, when Jackie and I will be on anyway as part of our normal Thank Furlough It's Friday. So it's becoming a 4-day conference, and that's because we're getting so many people want to be part of this. So many people want to be talking to you. So we've got so far, and it is growing, and this is the list that I had before: 12 keynotes, 9 full technical sessions, 7 student sessions. We're launching the Business Insight qualification. We're covering everything from VAT after Brexit to cybercrime, taking on staff, getting a promotion. Starling Bank and Zero are debating how technology is shaping the future of business. Amy Coble and Claire Allen debating how certified bookkeepers should embrace the title entrepreneur. We have a whole list of sponsors, the lead sponsor this year, of course, being Zero, but we've got everybody else, of course, involved. Sage, where would we be without them? They've been with us for as long as I can remember, from day one. And we've got Intuit, again, coming along and doing quite a bit for us. And we are going to be linking in, we think now, during the second day into their conference, which is taking place in America. So their opening speech will be linked in through our website, through our platform, so we can see what they're saying over there. And we'll also be getting them to raise a cup. So I'll talk to you about that one in a minute. At the moment, the first 700 people booking will get a special delegate pack through the post. When we started this program today, I think we had 60 left. We're now down to 50. So people are booking all the time. So that's for the first 700. We will, I think, be well over the 1,000 this time. We've got all sorts of bets on a sort of a sweepstake here as to who's doing what. And I know Iris, who's our anchor today, definitely believes that all the social media she's getting involved with is going to result in at least 1,000 people coming along. So there's a lot going on. Now, don't forget, you book for the whole thing, but you can see it at your leisure. You can either sit there glued to the screen and watch it as it happens, or actually you get the whole thing for 3 months. So you can watch it all again, or you can watch bits of it to suit yourself, or whatever it might be. Now, on the Wednesday, it still remains our Raise a Cup day. And it's very important that those of you who've been with us in the past and anybody that's new or whatever, you join us to raise a cup to the brilliant success of our members and bookkeepers right away across the world. This is our clapping on a Thursday night equivalent. This is saying that bookkeepers have helped small business and micro business. This is your day to show off how well you've done. So please get your clients, get your friends, get your family to raise a cup, and let's have a photograph of you. Or if you want to do it in groups and come on with a live cheer, then do that as well. I know some of the branches are planning some pretty big things. But just to give you an idea, today we've got a number of people from around the world on who are going to be part of our Raise a Cup Day, because it starts first thing in the morning whilst you're all still tucked up in bed, when Di Crawford-Errington will start the ball rolling from New Zealand. It then moves to Amanda Linton and Matthew Addison, who'll be running the Australia outlet. It sort of circles around the world. Then I know we've got Henry Ong on today. He's here he represents the Philippines. Henry and his massive number of people from the Philippines, we're hoping we'll get a lot more from there. The 700 I mentioned is just the UK at the moment, but I reckon we're probably going to have more from around the world, even just linking in to know what's going on. I mean, we've got Rustam Makhmadov from Kazakhstan. We've got Anastasia Ruskova from Russia. Irina Inskova from Belarus. Hello, Irina. I know you're having a few problems up there at the moment, but I hope they're working out okay. We've got the inimitable Helen Korikova with us from Ukraine, and everybody sees how she follows with ICFM Ukraine. We've got Nuraya Novzova from Azerbaijan. We've got Takwashar from India, Takwashar Sharma. He is tuning in today and starting to do big things for us in India. I hate the thought of missing anybody here because I'll get shouted at later, but I think at the moment I think that's probably all. Oh no, sorry, I tell a lie. As we circle around the world, we shall then go to Alison Ball. Those of you remember Alison Ball from Intuit. She's now doing other things as a marketer, but she's joining us and she's rallying the troops in America. And then Diane Muller will probably finish it all off because she's over in Vancouver in Canada and she's rallying the troops over there. So thousands and thousands of bookkeepers around the world will be talking about how wonderful they are. And so it's going to be absolutely fantastic. So please jump onto the web, get yourself booked in. And the way to book, we've had to use a separate website for this, and that's bookkeeperssummit, all one word, .com. And that's where you'll learn about everything that's going on. It'll tell you who's sponsoring all of the events. The platform, we showed it to council last week, and it was the first time I've seen it as well. They were absolutely over the moon. They said it's going to be fantastic. There's all sorts of things going on. It's not just a Zoom. It's a lot different. There'll be rooms that you can go into. There'll be you can meet up with other people. When you're watching somebody's presentation, there'll be a list of people next to you who else is listening in, and you'll be able to link in and say, hi, I'm listening too, and you'll be able to have quite a social event. Unfortunately, we're not meeting everybody personally, which is a really great shame, but this is about as close as it gets. So there'll be, you can go sit down and have a coffee with somebody and chat and all this sort of stuff. Difficult to explain, but we're opening it up a bit earlier, so it'll be before the week of the event, so that those of you who have booked in can start to put together your profile so that we all know who you are and what you are. And I do stress, nobody's information is given away. That's down to you. If you want to talk to somebody, you want to be contacted by one of the exhibitors later, then you give them your address. We don't. So that's all down to you. And there will be exhibitors. You'll be able to go into their virtual office and you'll be able to look at a presentation. You'll be able to talk to them, ask questions. And as I say, if you want to do that anonymously, they will answer your questions. If you want to say, yes, I'm interested, you click a button, everything goes through, they've got you on their system and they can send stuff out to you. So it's as close as we can get to a full conference. But that actually now is only 26 days away. And yeah, that's... it's not very long, is it? And I'm just looking also that Christmas is actually 9 weeks away today. Not far to go, so 65 days. Just to let you know, we will be doing our Thankful Friday with JM on the 11th of December. I think will be the last one because Jackie's having a week off between then and Christmas. We will be doing a Thankful It's Friday anyway on the 18th, and then after that the next Thankful It's Friday will be the 8th of January if we are all here and able to do it by then, but we have our fingers crossed. Our office number 0203 405 4000 still remains the best way to contact us. Please give us a call if you want to speak to us. You are doing so in phenomenal numbers at the moment. I hope that everybody is answering the questions that you're asking. Most of the professional bodies seem to have been closing down, getting rid of staff. One particular body has already I think, made redundant 20% of its staff. We, on the other hand, recognise that you need us. We've got to be here for you. We've taken on 4 extra staff. We have another one starting a week on Monday because we need to be there to answer your questions. Emails, I know sometimes we get a bit lax with the emails because you tend to send a lot of emails over the weekend and then send us the same email on Monday just in case we've missed it. If you've sent us an email, we won't miss it. If there's something urgent, I would suggest you get on the phone because it sometimes the emails are taking a bit of a time to get through. If we've promised you some information, I'm hoping that you get it. We're getting a huge amount of social media coverage and forum coverage saying that the team is doing well, that they love Mrs. Mount. We know that. Yeah, that's great. She's doing a lot for you, and we are all here to help. That's what you're here for. One lady this morning said, "How on earth do you manage to do it all for the fees?" Well, if you wish to pay more, you can do, but no, we're managing it, and we are cutting our cloth to make sure that we can give you the best soup possible. And yeah, we're okay. We're some of us have got our own family problems and everything else going on, and as I mentioned on one of our meetings recently, I have a granddaughter with a birthday at the weekend who unfortunately I won't be able to see, but when you look at it in the whole overall plan of things, that's minor. She'll get over it, and we can Zoom. Jackie, how are we doing? Anything else you've got to say?
Just a couple of more comments. Thank you for that. Yeah, as a correction, actually, I did get one of the questions wrong. Thank you. Oh. Janet Haynes has come back. Thank you, Janet, she said HMRC say employees do not need to have been furloughed under CJRS to be eligible for the job support scheme, which is absolutely correct. And I think I got that wrong. But employees can only claim for employees that were in their employment on the 23rd of September. The furlough is for the job retention bonus. They have to, I think, have been furloughed to claim the job retention bonus, but the job support scheme is separate. Again, I will come up with a full list of this. I think that was the last of the question answers. Couple on the chat. Nicola Payne, hi Nicola. Wales has the same job support scheme, but we have a 2-week lockdown starting tonight. So my understanding is that any business forced to close comes under closed JSS from the 1st of November. Everyone else is under the open JSS. Yeah, I think that's right. The first week will be under CJRS still. Not sure what's going to happen after the lockdown. Well, I think once Wales, if that is a short 2-week lockdown, when the lockdown is raised, then I think we will have to look at each business and see whether they're open or forced to close. I have to say, I've put so much together today. My brain is getting a bit confused, so I do apologise, and I will get this all cleared up for you.
Well, I've just been told off. It's not actually 5 members of staff. We've got 6 new members of staff with the lady going. So Maddie, who a lot of you will have spoken to, I know she's, when we last looked, she's taking, last week, I think she took 352 calls in a week. Then we have Ima, Alina, Felly, Sujay, who I know some of our new startups have spoken to. He's going down really, really well. He's our new onboarder. So anybody thinking about or just starting their practice life with us, we'll get to meet, talk to Sue J. And then Amanda, who joins us a week on Monday, and we've got high hopes for her as well. They've had a very short, sharp training session because they've needed to hit the ground running. And occasionally they've had to say, I just hold the line a moment, please. I need to check that one. If you've got one of those, it's probably because they only started the day before, but never mind. I think they're doing really, really well. And our exams, obviously, we're getting a huge demand on exams. A lot of people are taking mock exams, and it's something that Jackie and I have talked about for years. A lot of our members actually still like to sit mock exams. They've done their exams, they've passed, they've got their membership. I think you all are either just gluttons for punishment, or you just like to make sure you are the best at what you do, and that's absolutely fantastic. So that's good. Okay. I've just been passed a note, and I can't read it, I'm afraid. Oh yes, and my apologies to South Yorkshire branch due to an error. We and they clashed today. So as soon as the Jackie and Gary show started, I'm afraid they were cut off in their prime. So we do apologise. We cut them off at 2 o'clock. So I think we're doing something about getting them back on again. But June and I went to the North Yorkshire branch. I do apologise. At least I didn't call it Lancashire. The North Yorkshire branch earlier this week. Had great fun there, over 20 people, and what a nice bunch. And we know most of them because we've been up there before, and some of them are long-standing members. Others, a few new ones came on there as well. And I got the general hint they're doing something big for Razor Cup Day. So I'm waiting to see what that is. But anyway, don't forget all of that. Lucas. Now, the Luca Award deadline is technically today. I've had a few people saying, a couple of people who actually came to the Yorkshire branch meeting said, it sounded so great, hadn't thought about it, I'm going to have a go. Can I have a bit of an extension? Well, at the risk of getting told off when I come off air, if you send it in quickly and say, Gary sent you, let's see if that gets you. Yeah, I think we'll be okay. We do have a lot of entries, and we have some very good entries, but yours might be the one that makes the difference. You might be the one that gets chosen. And, imagine having that on your accolades for the future, on your website, on your letterheads, and tattooed on your forehead if necessary. I won a Luca. I mean, they are hugely important. Well, Jackie's won one, so they must be important.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great deal of pride. After the Luca Awards, I know we're not going to be able to walk around waving our Lucas in the air, but yeah, those that do are absolutely over the moon. So when they get them, unbelievable. They will still be real Lucas, but obviously we can't. There's no way that we can surprise people on the night, because if they see somebody suddenly get a knock on the door, everybody's going to be rushing out to the door to see if anybody's waiting up the street for them. So we have thought of various ways of doing it, but unfortunately we can't be too clever with it. But we will be having a fun night with it. We'll be working from a studio and talking to people. I think Amy Copeland will be live, and as usual, I won't know who on earth is going to win anything, so we're all going to be surprised. You'll see, from what I can gather, the nominees on screen, and then all of a sudden, everybody bar the winner will disappear. I think that's how it's going to happen. To be honest, with it all being virtual this year, I'm being kept a little bit in the dark, because everybody hasn't got really too much time to keep telling me what's going on. They're just getting on with it. And I have to say, the bits that I'm seeing look fantastic. Have a look at this website that we've done for the summit, bookkeepersummit.com. It's a brilliant website. Actually, for the first time, I saw our new CRM database, which ICB will be using, which will mean that you have a new link into this under my ICB. That will be launched about the 3rd week of January, we think, together with a new website. So that's going to be different. Everything will work on your mobile phone. So whatever you're doing, if you're out, if you're walking at the loo or whatever you want to do, it doesn't matter. We will be able to get to you, and you will be able to get to us, and it'll fit beautifully. And yeah, it's all go here at the moment. And talking of go, Jackie, anything more before we
your part?
Yeah, just a couple of comments here. Some bit more coming in on holidays. Saying if someone has 2 days of holiday that we paid 100%, could a business then claim for any of the 3 days the worked was not on holiday? Well, yeah, I think so, because I think if you treat your holiday pay as the worked days, and I see absolutely no reason why they shouldn't get the rest of it under the job support scheme. So the 3 days that not, you just split as per everything as normal, I would think. Faye Watkins, hi Faye, has said that, and I know this is the case because she and I have chatted about this, the web chats on HMRC are fabulous for underpayments. It's a bit time consuming. If anybody hasn't actually used the HMRC web chats, they are very good. And you do actually get some people on there who know what they're talking about and can give you some answers. So try the web chats, go in, you type everything in, a bit like your questions and answers here. It all comes back. So they work. Dilip has asked, when are we likely to get access to the slides? I will go through them as soon as I can, and we will get them out and up on the website, hopefully early next week, but it's likely to be end of Monday or Tuesday, I think. But I want to make sure that all the information is there and I've answered all your questions. Is there any else on, no, there's a couple there on Lucas, Gary, on the chat line. One from Lisa about the possibility of splitting small practice and sole practitioner for Lucas, please. And Claire's come back and said, I hope next year, the special anniversary, we can have a True Life Summit and a big party.
Well, we are hoping, those of you who saw not the last issue episode of this, I think the one before, I was walking around bits of London where we're looking for somewhere to host the event. Yeah, it's very difficult really, because as soon as you put your name down, they all want a deposit, and then we have a terrible job trying to get it back if it doesn't happen. I mean, I think, who knows, but hopefully by November of next year, which is our anniversary, things will be better. I mean, we've all got everything crossed that it will be. So we are going to work on the basis, I think, that it will be, and there'll be a big dinner of some sort. Our anniversary actually starts from, we're in our 25th year from the 2nd of November, because we launched on the 1st of November. So we're going to be doing a fair amount of, as being part of our 25th year. And the end of it next year, the 1st of November, will be the culmination of all that, of course. It's a bit restrictive because of COVID, but the main thing is that we'd rather have you all healthy and happy and virtual than risk anything by bringing you all together in a group. But I'm sure we will do something. You know, I can't promise it, but I'll be as close to giving you as a guarantee as I can. I've just been told there's another 20 of the tickets been sold for the summit. So please grab on to that. What was the one there about the splitting of, where is that?
Oh, that was from Lisa. Up on the chat line near the bottom, for future, could it be considered to split the small practice and the sole practitioner, please? That's from Lisa.
Well, a small practice as in a limited practice. I think most small practices to begin with tend to be sole practitioners, but I'll have a look at that, certainly.
Yeah, might be, depends how big is big. And just a quick one that will be useful to you all. Sarah Hawkins, thank you, Sarah, has put up, used the web chat this morning. It was great. So yeah, HMRC are doing an awful lot of work on their interactive helplines. I had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with all the tools becoming more interactive, and I think you'll find over the next year or so there's an awful lot going on at HMRC in the background where they're changing things. I've got a lot of HMRC information to get across at some stage, but obviously we haven't got time for that today. Lots going on.
Got, I think in total we've got 3 different people coming on from HMRC, all very high up people, and including the lady that's in charge of COVID. Yeah, she certainly had her work cut out for a while. So all of that's going on, so that'll be quite interesting to see. And I think that's probably about it. I'm looking around to see if June's got anything that she wants to cover, but I don't. Oh, from Kurt.
Oh, Kirsty's just come back. I agree. The chats are very helpful, and you can get a transcript of the conversation as a backup if necessary. I am really looking forward to the summit, as are we all, Kirsty. I had a chat with Kirsty on the phone the other day. So
I don't. Yeah. Okay.
I think that's all from me.
Is it this weekend the clocks change?
I think it is tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow night.
Yeah. So what is it? Spring forward and fall back. So they must go back.
Yeah.
So that gives us
extra hour sleep in the morning.
Yeah, that's it. Or an extra hour to get up early and work. 2 a.m. Sunday morning. It is. Yeah, that's right. We had, just to say, we had a council meeting again recently. That went very, very well. And this morning I've had a meeting with the new Sanctions Review Board, who will look at any sanctions that we apply for disciplinary matters, which you probably don't want to hear about. But anyway, that's up and working well. So thank you to Lucy Brown, David Anfield and Honor Woods, who have agreed to sit on that panel. And we've got some external people as well, who are, as near as damn it, lay persons. And if anybody else is interested in sitting on that panel because you have, experience, or you for some reason you've got a major interest in fairness in all such matters, please put your name forward, send it into customer service and put SRB, Sanctions Review Board. We'll be taking on different people at different times to supplement the main team. And
Claire's the same as you, Gary. Claire's come back on the chat line and said, Sunday morning, an extra hour to work. On a Sunday, Claire, what are you doing?
Yeah, well, those who've had any emails from me recently, a lot have been saying, why are you working so late? There is a lot of work to do at the morning. And I sent an email out the other morning at 1:30 in the morning, and I got a response which shocked me terribly. But I think the latest email I did was the morning before council, because we're just sorting out some rules for the council. And I think I sent it out at 3:20, and I got my response at 3:45. And now I was just going to bed and they were just getting up. So we know you're working very hard out there at the moment. The thing to remember is that this is the time when you can show to your clients how necessary you are. And the one thing that I'm getting, and we're doing some interviews at the moment with members, Ima, who I mentioned before, one of our new team members, she's doing some interviews. And it's amazing. Everybody is saying that their clients are taking to software like a rock to water. Basically, it sounds like a good idea, but they're sinking. And they can't work the damn stuff because they actually don't know about bookkeeping. So rather than it reduce the amount of work, in many cases, it's making more. So, all those worries you had many years ago, when some of our presenters at conference came in and said, oh, it's all right to be able to sit your feet up and do nothing shortly, they were completely way off the mark. But it's great. And I haven't got the latest figure of number of new clients this year. I will get it for next Friday. So I can tell you the last time I looked, it's a top 10,000. So a lot of work out there, and it's great. So we are absolutely super proud of all of you. You're doing a fantastic job. The feedback we're getting from clients and everything else is absolutely top rate. They just don't think they would have survived without you. So please keep it up. Jackie, as always, we rely upon you to come up with the goods, and you've certainly done that today, and we'll get that up on the web as quickly as we can. We'll get the slides done.
I'll get bits up about holidays and all other sorts of things, and I can get a complete list of questions and the chat line, then I'll make sure that everything has been answered on that, and we'll get that up that'll be a priority for very early next week.
The team is being a little non-committal at the moment because it depends on a lot of factors. But yeah, hopefully we're thinking end of Monday, possibly Tuesday.
It depends. I mean, I'll probably get it done by Monday, but it's a question of how quickly they can actually get out. Because the thing is, when you put something out, it's not just as easy as me just sending it out. There's a bit to do in the background to make sure that it works properly and it links properly. So it's not just a question of sticking it up on there and hoping for the best. So
yes,
I would just send them the presentation and let them sort out how they're going to get it out there.
Okay, so actually,
I think that's it. Thank you all for your questions.
And see you next Friday, if not before.
If not before. Thank you all. Have a lovely weekend. Hopefully, if you're in lockdown, you're not too bad. But take care. Bye.
Bye, everybody.